strangers in the steel hallways. Lyra followed the two human Marines as they guided her out of the medical bay. Their boots struck the metal floor with steady, heavy steps, the sound echoing through the corridor. The air was warmer here, and the lights glowed bright against the polished steel walls. The ship felt alive, not just a machine, but something that breathed and watched. Every vibration in the floor, every distant hum of engines, reminded her she was inside a vessel built for survival and war. They walked past crew members in dark uniforms. Some humans glanced at her quickly, then looked away. Others studied her openly, their expressions curious but guarded. It was the first time many of them had probably seen someone from her world. She felt like a rare animal placed in the middle of a human stronghold. As they turned a corner, a set of tall windows came into view. Through the glass, Lyra saw the endless black of space. Stars burned like cold fire, and in the far distance, a red gas cloud swirled. It was beautiful, but it also reminded her how far she was from home, and how easily she could disappear here. Without anyone knowing, one of the Marines spoke for the first time, his voice deep but not unkind. "You'll be taken to temporary quarters." She nodded without speaking. She didn't trust her voice not to tremble. The other Marine stayed silent, but his eyes kept moving, scanning every corner like danger could appear at any second. They passed through a large intersection where two groups of crew crossed paths. The hall was wide enough for a small vehicle to pass through. To one side, she glimpsed what looked like an armory, rows of weapons neatly locked behind reinforced glass. The humans inside were checking their gear, their movements practiced and exact. Lyra realized this was no merchant vessel. Every part of the Resolute was designed for combat. After several more turns, they stopped in front of a door. One Marine tapped a panel, and the door slid open with a quiet hiss. Inside was a small but clean room, a bed, a desk, a built-in storage unit. The walls were plain, but there was a faint hum of heat coming from somewhere above. It was warmer here than her own ship had been in weeks. "You'll stay here until the captain calls for you," the first Marine said. "If you need anything, use the comm panel by the door." Lyra stepped inside slowly, feeling the door slide shut behind her. For a moment, she stood still, just listening to the silence. It wasn't like the empty silence of deep space. This was softer, safer. She set the blanket from the medical bay on the bed and sat down. The mattress dipped slightly under her. Wait, and she realized how tired her body was, but she couldn't rest. Her mind kept replaying the captain's words. "You're not under arrest." Yet, he had said, humans were unpredictable. She didn't know if their kindness came with a price. If Kane decided she was more valuable to the guild than to him, she would be turned in. And once she was in guild hands, her life would be over. A soft chime came from the wall panel. She tapped it, and a voice spoke, calm, clear, and unmistakably human. "Captain Kane requests your presence in the observation deck." She hesitated, then replied, "On my way." The door slid open again, and another pair of Marines waited outside. This time, they walked her along a different route. Here, the corridors were busier, humans carrying crates, checking tablets, speaking in short, clipped orders. The scent of machine oil mixed with something warm, like baked bread. It was strange but comforting. They reached a lift, and the doors closed around them. The floor rose smoothly, and when the doors opened, the air felt different, cooler, quieter. As if this part of the ship was set apart from the rest, they led her into a wide chamber with massive windows stretching from floor to ceiling. Beyond the glass lay a view of space so sharp it felt unreal. The warship's long shadow stretched across the stars. Captain Kane stood near the center, hands clasped behind his back. He didn't turn as she approached. For a moment, they both looked out at the void. "Do you know why I brought you here?" he asked without facing her. "No," she answered truthfully. He glanced over his shoulder, his gaze steady. "I wanted you to see what you're a part of now." She followed his eyes and noticed small dots moving against the backdrop of space escort. Craft, drones, and patrol ships weaving in careful patterns. This is not just a warship, Kane said. It's a moving fortress. And everyone aboard has a role. Lyra stayed quiet, unsure if he was warning her or trying to earn her trust. I don't care what the guild says about you, he went on. But if you stay here, you follow our rules. If you lie to me again, there won't be a second chance. His voice was calm, but there was steel in it. She swallowed and nodded. I understand. Kane studied her for a moment longer, then turned back to the stars. You'll have time to rest tonight, tomorrow. You work. Her mind raced. Work doing what? But she didn't dare ask. Instead, she let her eyes drift to the glass, watching the warship's shadow stretch endlessly into the dark. She realized something then. Whether she trusted these humans or not, the Resolute was now her only shield. In a galaxy that wanted her dead, the truth in the captain's quarters. The call came just after the ship's lights dimmed to evening mode. Lyra had been sitting on the small bed in her quarters, staring at the blank wall, the cum panel beside. The door chimed, and a voice said, Captain Kane requests you in his quarters. Immediately, her stomach tightened. This was not a casual meeting. When the door slid open, 2 Marines stood waiting. Neither spoke as they walked her through the quieter upper levels of the ship. The corridors here were different, wider, cleaner, with soft lighting and no engine noise. It felt like stepping into a part of the vessel few ever saw. They stopped at a large door marked with the captain's insignia. One Marine pressed the panel, and the door opened with a low hiss. The captain's quarters were larger than she expected. One side held a desk stacked with datapads. The other had a sitting area with 2 chairs facing a low table. A display screen on the wall showed a real-time map of surrounding space, dotted with moving points of light. Kane stood near the desk, glancing at a file. When he looked up, his expression gave nothing away. Sit, he said simply. She obeyed, sinking into the chair opposite him. The cushion was firm, the air warm, but her skin prickled under his steady gaze. He sat across from her, resting his forearms on the table. I've read the guild's notice about you, he began. They call you a smuggler, a thief, and a flight risk. Lyra's lips pressed into a thin line. They're lying, she said quietly. Kane leaned back slightly, eyes never leaving hers. Then tell me the truth. She hesitated. In her mind, she weighed the danger of telling him everything against the danger of saying too little. If she lied, he would know. She could feel it. So she took a slow breath. I was hired to transport medical supplies to the colony of Vareth, she began. When I docked for inspection, the patrol found a sealed container hidden in my cargo. Inside was restricted technology, illegal on every major world. Kane's brow furrowed slightly. You didn't know it was there? No, she said firmly. My rival, a trader named Corval, had the chance to load cargo before departure. I didn't check because the shipment was supposed to be inspected at the source. Kane tapped his fingers lightly on the table. And? The guild believed him over you. Lyra's hands clenched in her lap. They didn't just believe him, they wanted to. Corval has friends on the guild council. They saw a chance to remove me from the trade routes. Her voice grew bitter. And they succeeded. They posted a bounty high enough to make every hunter in the sector chase me. Silence stretched between them. The hum of the ship's system seemed louder now. Kane finally spoke. You could have run anywhere. Why send a distress signal knowing it could be your death sentence? She let out a humorless laugh. I was already dead. Better to risk capture than freeze alone in the dark. He studied her face, searching for cracks in her words. I've dealt with the guild before, he said at last. They're efficient, and they don't waste time on small targets. If they're after you, there's more to it than rivalry. Lyra's throat tightened. There is something else, she admitted. When I saw what was inside the container, I recognized it. It wasn't just illegal tech. It was a prototype human AI core. Kane's eyes narrowed. That's impossible. Terran AI tech never leaves our borders. She gave a small, tired shrug. Tell that to Corval. He had it. He planted it on me. And now both the guild and whoever lost it want me silenced. The captain leaned forward. His voice low but sharp. If what you're saying is true, then you've just made this my problem too. Because if someone is smuggling Terran military tech through alien hands, it's not just theft, it's war. Her chest tightened at the word. I didn't want any of this, she whispered. I just wanted to fly my ship, trade fairly, and live free. Kane sat back, folding his arms. You've put me in a position, Lyra. I can hand you over and wash my hands of this, or I can keep you here, which means protecting you and making enemies I don't need. Her voice came out softer than she intended. Then why haven't you handed me over already? For the first time, his expression shifted, just a flicker, but enough to make her think he didn't hate the question. He stood, walking to the window where the stars spilled endless light across the black. Finally, he turned back to her. Because I have a policy. I don't give people to executioners without proof, and I think you're telling the truth. Drifting in silence, Lyra sat in the pilot's seat, staring at the endless black outside her small ship. Her hands were cold. Her breath fogged the cracked visor of her helmet. The stars did not move. The darkness did not end. Her engines were dead. Her power cells almost empty, and the oxygen warning light blinked in slow, cruel rhythm. She had been drifting for 3 days. Maybe more time had started to lose meaning. She had sent out her distress signal more times than she could count. Every time, the result was the same static. Her voice had echoed back at her in the empty cabin, and then nothing. Her food was almost gone. Her water pack was leaking. If no one came soon, she would die here, alone in the cold. Her people would not come for her. She knew that. They had already decided she was guilty of a crime she did not commit. The trading guild had branded her a smuggler. She had been carrying only legal cargo, but a rival had hidden something dangerous. In her shipment, when the patrol searched her ship, they found it, and that was enough. She had been forced to run, and the guild had posted a bounty. Now, even if a ship did hear her call, it was just as likely they would turn her in for a reward. Ship's lights dimmed again. She hugged herself, trying to hold on to some warmth. Her suit's temperature controls were dead. She could hear the groan of metal as her ship cooled in the freezing void. Every sound felt louder, like the ship itself was warning her that it could not hold out much longer. Lyra leaned forward and pressed the COM switch again. This is Lyra of the freighter Silver Wing, stranded and in need of assistance. Coordinates are attached. I have limited life support. Her voice was hoarse. She let go of the button and waited, static. Her shoulders sagged. Her eyes burned, but she would not cry. Tears were just wasted water now. She pushed away from the console and drifted toward the small sleeping bunk. Her body felt heavy, though. There was no gravity. The emergency grav system had failed 2 days ago. Her hair floated around her face, tickling her skin. She pulled herself into the bunk and wrapped the thin blanket around her. The cold still bit at her fingers. She closed her eyes and tried to remember the noise of a busy port, the smell of hot food stalls, the laughter of other pilots trading stories. Now there was only silence, silence so deep it made her ears ache. Then, just as she was about to drift into uneasy sleep, the COM crackled. At first she thought it was her imagination. Then a voice came through, deep and steady. This is the Terran warship Resolute. Identify yourself. Lyra's eyes flew open. Terrans, humans, her mind raced. She had heard stories about humans, warriors, explorers, unpredictable and dangerous in battle, but also honorable in ways no other species understood. Some said they would fight to the death to protect even a stranger. Others said they were just another empire in the making. She had never met one in person. Her hand hovered over the COM switch. If she answered, they would know she was wanted. If she stayed silent, they might pass by. Her oxygen meter was blinking faster now. She didn't have the luxury of thinking for long. This is Lyra, she said finally, her voice trembling. Freighter Silver Wing, I am stranded. My engines are offline. My life support is failing. There was a pause. Static hissed. Then the human voice returned, calm but firm. Coordinates received. Maintain position. We are closing in. She floated back into the pilot seat, staring into the black. Somewhere out there, a human warship was turning toward her. She tried to imagine what it would look like: massive, armored, bristling with weapons. Her tiny freighter would look like a toy next to it. Minutes passed like hours. Then a shadow began to form against the distant stars. It grew larger and larger until it blotted out the light. Her breath caught. The Resolute was unlike anything she had ever seen. Sharp lines, glowing engine thrusters, and the slow, deliberate movement of something that feared nothing in space, even without knowing. Human designs, she could feel its power. Her ship shuddered as a tractor beam locked on. "Do not be afraid," the voice said over the comm. Her heart pounded in her chest. Fear was not her only feeling. There was something else, a strange, small spark of hope. For the first time in days, she was not completely alone in deep space. The warship's shadow, Lyra's breath, fogged the glass. As the human warship drew closer, it filled her view until there was nothing but steel and shadows. The Resolute moved with the slow confidence of a predator that had no fear. She had seen big ships before, but this was different. This was not a freighter or a cargo hauler. This was a vessel built for war. Rows of gun turrets lined its hull, each one larger than her entire cockpit. The engines burned with a deep blue light, casting a faint glow over the cold metal. Panels of armor shifted as if alive, adjusting to shield the ship's weaker points. The warship's sheer presence made her feel smaller than she ever had. Even her heartbeat seemed to quiet in respect or fear. Her comm hissed again. "This is Captain Elias Kane of the Terran warship Resolute. State your situation clearly." The voice was firm, controlled, and gave nothing away. She swallowed, forcing her dry throat to work. "My engines are gone. Life support failing. Oxygen low. I have no weapons." She waited, afraid the mention of no weapons would make her an easy target. There was a pause. Then the captain's voice returned. "Prepare for docking. You will be brought aboard." No questions about who she was. No demands for payment yet. Her stomach twisted. Was this rescue? Or was she just a prize to be claimed? A deep hum filled her ship as a tractor beam gripped her hull. It was like invisible hands lifting her through space. Her controls were dead, useless now. The Resolute's hangar bay loomed ahead, its doors opening like the jaws of some giant beast. Inside, bright lights cut through the darkness. She had to squint as her ship was drawn in. The moment she crossed into the bay, she saw them, humans. Tall figures in dark armor stood at attention along the landing strip, their faces hidden behind visors, their movements sharp and precise, the kind of soldiers who could kill without hesitation. Her ship touched down with a soft thud. The tractor beam released her, and the hum faded. A voice echoed through the bay. "Remain inside your vessel until instructed." She obeyed, though her fingers itched to unbuckle and run. The airlock door of her freighter hissed open, and a team of Marines stepped inside. Their weapons were not pointed directly at her, but they were ready. One of them gestured for her to move. She floated forward, her boots finding the magnetic floor of the hangar, up close. Humans were even more imposing than she imagined. Their broad shoulders and strange flat faces were unlike any species she knew. Yet there was something steady in their eyes, something that made her feel watched. Not hunted, they escorted her across the hangar toward a tall man waiting near a raised platform. Even without the uniform, she would have known he was in charge. His presence was calm but heavy, like a storm before the first strike. "I'm Captain Elias Kane," he said, his voice carrying easily over the hum of machinery. "You're far from your own territory, and your ship's registry has some interesting alerts." Lyra's stomach dropped, he knew. She opened her mouth to explain, but no words came. The captain studied her for a long moment, then nodded to his soldiers. "Escort her to medical, then quarters. We'll talk after she's warm and breathing clean air." She was led through wide steel corridors, her boots clanging softly with each step. Everywhere she looked, humans worked with quiet efficiency. Some glanced at her, their expressions unreadable. She felt like a small creature walking through the heart of a giant. The ship vibrated faintly under her feet, a deep, living pulse of engines and power. When they reached the medical bay, she was met by a woman in a white coat. The medic scanned her with a handheld device. Oxygen depletion. Mild frostbite, dehydration, she reported. Lyra wanted to say she was fine, but her shaking hands told the truth. The medic gave her a blanket and a cup of warm liquid. The taste was strange, but it spread warmth through her chest. The captain entered quietly, his boots barely making a sound on the floor. He waited until the medic stepped away before speaking. "You're lucky we were close enough to hear your distress call," he said, "or unlucky, depending on your view of humans." Lyra met his gaze, unsure what to say. She had no idea what humans did with fugitives from alien law. "You're not under arrest," Kane said after a moment, "but I will need to know why a bounty notice arrived at the same time as your distress signal." Her fingers tightened around the cup. The guild's reach was longer than she thought. "I didn't do what they say," she said quietly. "I was framed." The captain's eyes didn't change, but something in his posture shifted. "I've heard that before," he said. Then he turned and headed for the door. "Rest, we'll talk again soon." When he was gone, Lyra stared at the closed door. She didn't know if she had just been rescued or captured by someone far more dangerous than the guild. Her breath caught. He stepped closer to the table. "But trust is earned. You want my ship's protection? You work for it. What kind of work?" she asked warily. "The kind that makes enemies disappear before they can harm my crew," he said flatly. She realized this was not a request, it was a command. And if she said no, she would be walking out of the Resolute into the hands of the guild. Kane tapped a control on the table, and a star map appeared between them. "Tomorrow we arrive at a mining station under guild control," he said. "We're going to take it from them. You're going to help." Her pulse pounded in her ears. "Why me?" "Because you know their codes, their procedures, and because it's the only way I can prove you're worth the risk." She looked at the glowing map. The enemy territory marked in red. This was more than a mission, it was a test, and she couldn't afford to fail. Fire in the Black Lyra stood on the Resolute's bridge, her hands gripping the railing as the star map shifted into a live display of the mining station ahead. It hung in the dark like a metal spider, its docking arms stretched wide, glowing with the lights of incoming and outgoing ships. Around it drifted several smaller escort craft guild patrols, moving in slow loops. The captain's voice cut through the low hum of the bridge. "Status?" "Shields holding at full," a young human officer replied. "All weapons primed, targeting systems locked." Kane turned his sharp gaze on Lyra. "You're up. Feed those docking codes you promised into our system." She stepped forward to the console, her fingers moving over the unfamiliar Terran controls. Symbols flashed across the screen as she translated the guild's encryption. It felt strange, helping a warship breach a station she once would have avoided at all costs. Within seconds, the ship's AI confirmed her work. Access granted to all outer docking doors. Kane gave a single nod. "Good helm, take us in slow." The massive warship began to glide forward, its engines whispering in the void. No one spoke. The crew moved like parts of one machine, efficient and silent. It was not the wild, chaotic energy she had seen on pirate ships. This was discipline. It made her uneasy because discipline meant they could turn their focus on her at any moment. As the Resolute drew closer, the guild patrol ships adjusted their course. One hailed the station, its com signal flashing on the tactical display. Kane's mouth curled in a faint, cold smile. "They think we're here for inspection," he said. "Let's not disappoint them." The first shot came without warning, a bright lance of light, shot from the Resolute's forward guns, striking the lead patrol ship. Its shields flared and collapsed in less than 2 seconds. The hull split apart, scattering debris into the black. The bridge crew didn't cheer or shout, they simply moved to the next target. Lyra's heart pounded as more guild ships rushed in, firing back. The warship's hull vibrated as enemy fire hit its shields. Shields at 92%. An officer reported calmly. The Resolute answered with a broadside. It's heavy. Cannons sending shockwaves through the void. Another patrol ship vanished in a burst of light from her station. Lyra spotted an opening in the station's defense grid. Their docking arm 3, lower level, it's only lightly shielded. She said quickly. Kane didn't hesitate. Helm, alter course, weapons, clear that arm. The Resolute shifted like a predator locking on prey. Its cannons tore through the weakened section, and in moments, the docking arm's outer shields collapsed. A boarding tube extended from the warship's side. Locking onto the exposed airlock, Kane turned to Lyra. You're coming with me. Her eyes widened. What? I thought, no time, you know the station layout. Move. Within minutes, she was in the hangar bay, wearing a borrowed light armor suit and following the captain and his Marines into the boarding tube. The sound of her own breathing filled her helmet as the tube's doors opened into the station. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of oil and burning metal. Guild mercenaries were already there, weapons raised. The Marines didn't slow. The first volley from the humans dropped 3 enemies instantly, their precision terrifying. Lyra kept to the edges, ducking behind cargo crates. Her role was clear guide. Them, unlock doors, disable systems, while the Marines pushed forward. She hacked into a control panel, shutting down a section of the station's security grid. The lights above flickered, then went dark in the enemy sector. The Marines used the confusion to advance, their movements smooth and unstoppable. They reached the control center, a reinforced chamber with blast doors. Kane signaled for Lyra to step up. This is you, he said. She knelt by the door's panel, fingers working fast. The guild's encryption was familiar Corval's signature. CODING style. It made her jaw tighten. She bypassed the final lock and the door slid open. The humans surged in, taking positions around the room. The guild commander inside shouted an order. But it was too late. Within moments, his weapon was kicked away, and he was pinned to the floor. Kane stood over him. This station is under Terran protection now, he said coldly. The commander spat a curse, but Kane ignored it. Secure him. Move the civilians to the safe zone. Lyra followed as the Marines swept through the station, pushing enemy forces back into the far docking arms. She couldn't believe how fast it was happening. The Resolute's crew moved like they had rehearsed this 100 times. For the first time she saw what humans could really do in a fight. It wasn't just strength, it was precision, coordination, and a refusal to stop until the job was done. When the last enemy ship fled into the dark, the station's lights came back on. Kane removed his helmet, his face calm but sharp. You did well, he told her. She blinked in surprise. I just opened doors. That's all we needed, he said. Then he glanced toward the stars outside the station's viewport. They'll know we're here now. The guild won't forget this. Lyra realized then that she had crossed a line. She wasn't just a passenger anymore. She was part of the Resolute's fight, whether she liked it or not. The guild strikes back. The mining station was quiet, too quiet. Lyra stood near one of the wide observation windows, looking out at the scattered debris left from the earlier battle. The stars glimmered as if nothing had happened, but she could still feel the tension in the air. The Resolute floated nearby, its massive shape a silent guardian. Marines moved through the station, securing hallways and escorting workers to safety. It should have felt like victory. It didn't. She had learned in her years as a trader that victories always brought attention, and the guild's attention was deadly. If they had lost here, they would come back bigger, stronger, and angrier. Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden shrill tone over the station's comms. Unidentified vessels incoming, multiple jump signatures detected. Her stomach dropped. They were here, from the viewport. She saw them appear one by one, dark shapes tearing through the fabric of space, dropping into normal flight. Guild warships, sleek, predatory. their hulls painted with the red and black insignia of the Trade Council. Not patrol craft this time. These were full strike vessels, and there were many on the Resolute's bridge. Captain Kane's voice carried through the comm channels. All units, prepare for engagement, civilians. Stay in secure zones. Lyra's pulse raced as she moved toward the docking arm. The Marines there were already sealing the stations. Bulkheads, the deck under her feet trembled as the first exchange of fire began outside. She could see it through the viewports, streaks of energy lancing across the void. The Resolute's shields shimmered as they absorbed the first hits. Kane's voice crackled through her earpiece. "Lyra, I need you in the command center." Now, she didn't waste a second. Running through the station's corridors, she pushed past workers and soldiers. When she reached the command deck, the room was alive with noise screens flashing, voices calling out shield readings, targeting locks and damage reports. Kane stood at the center, one hand on the railing, the other pointing to a tactical display. "They're trying to box us in," he said without looking at her. "They'll cut the Resolute off from the station and pick us apart separately." Lyra's eyes scanned the map. The guild ships were forming a crescent shape, pushing the Resolute into a corner. She knew their tactics. She had seen them used to trap smugglers. "There's a gap," she said, pointing to a narrow section between two of the enemy vessels. "It's bait," Kane said flatly. "They want us to run through it so they can collapse the trap." Lyra shook her head. "They'll collapse it too early. They always do. If you swing wide first, you can break their formation before they close in." Kane's eyes flicked to hers. "You're sure?" "Yes," she said, her voice steady. For a long second, he studied her face. Then he turned to the helm officer. "Execute." The Resolute moved like a predator fainting before the strike. Its thrusters flared as it banked away from the gap. The guild ships adjusted to match, exactly as Lyra predicted. At Kane's order, the Warship swung back hard, its forward batteries lighting up. The first enemy ship in the line took the full force of the barrage, its shields collapsing instantly. The explosion tore a hole in their crescent. The Resolute punched through, guns blazing. The bridge crew called out victories. Enemy vessels retreating, their formation broken. But the guild wasn't finished. Two of their heavier warships pushed forward, trading fire directly with the Resolute. The deck under Lyra's feet shook violently. A console nearby sparked as enemy fire slipped through the shields and hit the hull. "Shields at 60%, a crewman shouted. Kane's jaw tightened. "They're trying to cripple our engines." Lyra's mind raced. If the Resolute lost mobility, it would be over. She remembered the station's layout. The main reactor room was still connected to the docking arm, and she still had access to its systems from the earlier hack. "I can overload the station's tractor beam and use it against them," she said quickly. Kane's eyes narrowed. "You can do that?" "Yes, but I'll have to do it from the station's control room. That's under fire," he warned. She straightened. "Then give me a rifle." Minutes later, she was back in the docking arm with a small escort of Marines. The air was thick with smoke, and the distant boom of weapons fire echoed through the metal walls. They fought their way to the control room, pushing past pockets of guild mercenaries that had boarded the station. Inside, she sprinted to the main console, fingers flying over the controls. Warnings flashed on the screen, but she ignored them, rerouting power to the tractor emitters outside. The nearest guild warship had closed in, its guns hammering the Resolute's shields. Lyra locked the tractor beam onto its hull, reversed polarity, and fired. The warship shuddered as the beam yanked it sideways straight into the path of the Resolute's broadside. The human cannons tore through its armor, splitting it in half. The sudden kill sent shock through the remaining guild ships. Several broke formation, retreating into jump space. The comm channel lit up with Kane's voice. "Nice work. Now get back here." She allowed herself a small, breathless smile. For the first time since her rescue, she felt like she had truly earned her place on this ship. As the last guild vessel vanished into the dark, the Resolute moved back into protective position over the station. Kane met her at the airlock when she returned. "You saved my ship," he said simply. She shrugged, still catching her breath. "You saved me first." He gave a faint nod. "Then maybe we're even for now." A new course. The battle was over. The stars outside the Resolute were calm again, as if the chaos had never happened. The mining station floated in silence, its damaged sections already under repair by crews in bulky suits. Inside the Terran warship, the air was warm, the lights steady, and the constant thrum of the engines felt like a heartbeat, for the first time since she'd been stranded in deep space. Lyra felt she could breathe without fear. She stood on the observation deck, watching repair drones dart across the station's hull. Her reflection stared back at her in the glass-tired eyes. Messy hair, a thin frame wrapped in a borrowed crew jacket. So much had changed in just a few days. She had been ready to die in the cold. Now she was alive because of a human warship. And more than that, because of Captain Elias Kane. She heard the sound of boots behind her, and didn't need to turn to know it was him. Kane stepped up beside her, his gaze fixed on the stars. "The Guild will think twice before hitting this station again," he said quietly. She nodded. "But they'll still be after me." "They will," he agreed without hesitation. "They don't forgive, and they don't forget." For a moment, they stood in silence, the black ocean of space stretching endlessly before them. Finally, Kane spoke again. "You have a choice now, Lyra. We can drop you at the nearest safe world under Terran protection once you're planetside. We can make it difficult for the Guild to track you." He paused, his voice steady but with an undercurrent she couldn't quite read. "Or you can stay here, aboard the Resolute. It won't be easy. You'll work, you'll follow orders, and you'll be part of this crew." She turned to study his face. He wasn't offering it as a kindness, he was offering it as a path. One dangerous, unpredictable path. Her mind spun with the weight of the decision. On a planet, she might have peace for a while, but the Guild had long reach. They would find her sooner or later. On the Resolute, she would be a target, but she wouldn't be alone. "What would I do here?" she asked. Kane's lips twitched in the faintest hint of a smile. "You've already proven you can handle tactical systems. We could use a navigator who understands more than Terran charts. You've seen how the Guild operates, you know their tactics. That's valuable. And if I say no?" She pressed. "Then I'll make sure you get to safety. And I'll wish you luck," he said simply. She looked back out at the stars. The Resolute's shadow stretched across the void, long and unyielding. She thought about the Marines who had fought beside her, the way the crew moved like a single organism in battle, the unspoken bond that seemed to tie every person on this ship together. She had never belonged anywhere, not truly, always moving from port to port, ship to ship, job to job. "Maybe that could change. I'll stay," she said finally, her voice firm. Kane gave a short nod. "Then welcome to the Resolute Navigator." Lyra, the title sounded strange but right. Something warm stirred in her chest. She was not just a passenger anymore. She was part of something larger. Over the next days, she was given her own small workstation on the bridge. The crew treated her with cautious curiosity at first, but she earned their respect quickly. She plotted routes, analyzed enemy movements, and even taught some of the younger officers the tricks of decoding Guild transmissions. In return, they showed her how Terran systems worked, how to read their tactical displays, and how to keep her station ready for battle. One evening, while running a final check on the navigation logs, she caught Kane watching her from the captain's chair. He didn't say anything, but there was something in his eyes, a recognition, perhaps that she was no longer an outsider. She offered a small nod, and he returned it before turning back to his console. That night, as the Resolute prepared to jump to its next mission, Lyra stood once more at the observation deck. The stars shifted slowly as the ship adjusted course. She remembered the moment she had been drifting alone, her voice lost in the static, believing no one would ever hear her, and she remembered the voice that had answered, "This is the Terran warship Resolute." She smiled faintly to herself. She was no longer a ghost in the void. She had a place, a purpose, and people who would fight beside her. The guild would come again of that. She had no doubt. But when they did, she wouldn't be hiding. She would be ready. The Resolute's engines flared, flooding the deck with a faint blue glow. Lyra placed her hand against the glass, watching the streaks of light as the jump drive engaged. Alone. In deep space, she whispered, until a human warship answered the call, and then the stars stretched, and the Resolute vanished into the endless black, carrying her toward whatever came next.